Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Liverpool Echoes Blood Red podcast. On today's episode, we'll talk about Liverpool's 3-0 win over Ajax and also have a look forward to the upcoming clash with Leeds United in the Premier League tomorrow. I'm subbing in for Matt Addison today as your host. My name is Tom Greaves, and I'm joined by Paul Gorst, Theo Squires and Tom Cavilla. Gorsty, how was Amsterdam, mate? I've just read your opinion piece on the Liverpool website. I've been quite jealous seeing everyone over there on all the socials all week.
Yeah, do you know what? It was really good, actually. I think Liverpool fans needed it, to be honest. I mean, we obviously had the documentary that went out a couple of weeks back, wasn't it? The BBC Panorama thing, kind of focusing on the farce that was Saint-Denis at the start of France. And speaking to a few people around that time, and quite a few of them were adamant that was then done with European aways, and why were they bothering trying to support the team across the continent when they're being treated like essentially animals and being subjected to tear gas and whatever else. And the general theme from that weekend was, it could have been fatal had Liverpool fans not been kind of aware of what was happening around them and kept calm and eventually managed to get it through. And they're still kind of waiting for a decisive kind of outcome from that, aren't we? Essentially, with the French minister trying to blame Liverpool fans and UEFA trying to say it was due to latecomers of fans and whatever else. So then following on with that, you had Napoli, which is not the safest place, shall we say, for away supporters. Trying to say that diplomatically, not even a particularly safe place for journalists. Myself and a couple of others got a little bit of a chasing from some Napoli ultras when we were out there in Italy in September. So this one was completely different. There was just a really good atmosphere around the ground in the build-up to it. Fans, happily kind of mixing amongst each other, happily chatting. And just everything about it was just kind of ideal. Pre-match, all the Ajax fans were kind of waving the white flags with Liverpool's badge on and Ajax's badge in a kind of bit of show of respect, a little bit of friendship between the two sets of fans. They played You Never Walk Alone before kickoff. And there was a slightly surreal moment in the second half when Ajax fans kind of saw the writing on the wall. I think Liverpool had just gone 2-0 up and they were singing Three Little Birds in a kind of show of defiance. And then Liverpool fans joined in and you had the entire ground singing Bob Marley. And that was a bit of a strange thing. But it was great to see, to be fair. And the people I've spoke to since have just spoken about how good it was just to be treated like normal human beings. Sadly, that isn't always the case, is it? Particularly in English football, when a lot of fans are still treated with suspicion by so many of the authorities. And just coming off the back of, we had all that nonsense from the Manchester City fans, then we singing about Hillsborough and Heysel, and then West Ham fans, misguidedly trying to wind Liverpool up with pro-monarchy sentiments. And then we had the Forest thing on Saturday, less than 5 minutes in there, singing about, always the victims as well. So this was a hugely refreshing and welcome change. And just a shame that Liverpool can't play Ajax more, because it really was an enjoyable couple of days.
Yeah, it seemed to be like the wider impression was from, obviously I wasn't there, but from social media and everything, everyone seems to have had an absolute whale of a time in every aspect off the pitch, and then obviously Liverpool doing the business on the pitch. Theo, do you think now, in terms of football, it's just all eyes on the Champions League for Liverpool? Do you think we're going to have to put all our eggs in that basket now?
Just going to say, Gorsty there showing his support for the European Super League, isn't he? Wants to play Ajax every week. It's certainly been more enjoyable, hasn't it, following the Champions League this season? When they lost 4-1 at Napoli, we thought it was going to be miserable in Europe as well, and the full season was just going to fall apart. And there have been difficult moments in some of the games, but it's given us a big win in Ibrox. It's given us a last-minute win at Anfield against Ajax, and then this one as well. It's like the games you can enjoy more. Premier League is probably going to be a bit of a struggle, certainly in terms of getting to top four and title contention. But you'd like to think after the World Cup, when players are back from injury, they can sort of piece it together and make a decent top four charge, see how high they can end up. But you might as well just enjoy the European days. These are the games where Liverpool made their history for so long now, when you think right back to the 60s, 70s, 80s. And now it's, well, why not do it again? Like, they've got so many finals under Jurgen Klopp. There's no team they will fear in knockout football. Away goals are gone, so they're not even going to have to worry about them. It's just getting the job done at Anfield, and then if you go and put a 3 past Ajax and Amsterdam, if we ignore the first half hour of that game, then you can feel confident in those games too. Liverpool, the squad's going to be confident of doing well in Europe. Jurgen Klopp's going to be confident of doing it because he's been to finals with Dortmund as well. There's no reason why they can't go all the way, but then this squad isn't going to be built up fine. We'll just sack off the league now, are they? That they'll still want to challenge as much as they can in everything possible, and it's just about building some rhythm, getting some consistency, and getting the results they come. Every time we seem to have turned a corner, then they have a Nottingham Forest game that rocks up in there to bring it all crashing back down. Hopefully, once and for all, this Ajax win was that final corner turned, and Liverpool season can start here until we have the World Cup break in a few weeks. But yeah, it has been the highlights of the season so far, and I suppose that shows how miserable the season has been so far on the pitch. But more of that to come, and it will turn around in the winter, or I suppose after the World Cup, and we look into the new year.
Yeah, it seems like however we seem to be getting on in all competitions at any time, whenever we go into the European Cup, albeit we did get battered by Napoli, it just seems to just fall into place for Liverpool. The 3-0 win was a big moment, really, because it could have really derailed Liverpool having that result against Nottingham Forest at the weekend. Tom, what were your initial thoughts on the back of that?
On the back of the Forest game?
No, well, on the back of the Forest game and just going into such a good performance, especially in that second half for Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Forest game could have had a big impact. Like you said, it could have, going into the Ajax game, it's not exactly an easy ground to play at. They've got some good players, Ajax. But yeah, they handled the occasion really well. Ajax could have scored probably at least 2 goals in the first half, and Liverpool's defending hasn't been great at times this season. We've seen that in quite a lot of games, especially in the Champions League, that Napoli game in particular. So, to get through that was, really important. And you see it a lot in games sort of conceding, either side of half-time, just before or just after the break is always, famously a bad time to concede. And obviously that was the case for Napoli. It just sort of looked like the confidence, drained out of them as soon as that Salah goal went in. And then obviously getting the goals straight after the second half starting as well was a massive blow for Ajax. So, yeah, it's really professional performance from Liverpool. And, yeah, I think, just going back to your other point about whether this should be like a priority, I think, it probably has to be for Liverpool now. They've got a good chance of, going deep into the competition. I think Liverpool always seems to sort of thrive off those, one-off games or, over 2 legs. They seem to just really perform those circumstances. So, I think Liverpool can really, have confidence in going in a run in the Champions League again this year. And, you back them to sort of get to, at least quarterfinals, semi-finals you'd be aiming for. And, let's see where it takes them.
Yeah, it's, of course, I thought the first half was more of a contest, and the Ajax fans certainly seemed up for it. But yeah. Liverpool then, as Tom says, just go and grab the second after the break, and it was plain sailing from there, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I was about to write in our live blog on the day, you feel that Liverpool can create something big if they just put a little bit of quality together, because they hadn't at all until Jordan Henderson plays that pass. Mohamed Salah clips it in, and then all of a sudden it was, this is what Liverpool can do when they start to just kind of play anywhere near the capabilities. I thought he rode the storm for the first half hour or so, didn't he? Obviously, Steve Berghouse should have scored very early on when he hit the post, and then Dusan Tadic had one that was, it was a great block by Trent looking back at it. But other than that, Liverpool were always fairly comfortable, and then once Salah hooks that one in, I never really felt that it was going to be anything other than a Liverpool win. Darwin Nunez should have made it 2-0 before the break, but then he makes amends, doesn't he, with a kind of moment that sums him up, really. It was meant to be a cross for Salah. He's over it, the keeper saved it, and then from the corner he stuck it in with a great header. So another lively kind of energetic performance from him, and it's going to be great watching him play over the next few months, because every time he plays, he's all action, isn't he? And he keeps you interested, and you never quite know what he's going to do. So it's going to be certainly interesting watching him over the next few months, and then just generally developing into the player that Liverpool think that he can become. And Harvey Elliott as well, getting back-to-back goals now in the Champions League. I thought he took that really well on his right foot into the roof of the net. So generally, a lot to be positive about on Wednesday night to kind of shake off the incredible disappointment that was Forest on Saturday, because that was a massive chance to get right back into the mix of things when you think of Newcastle beating Spurs and Chelsea and United drawing. So that was a massive opportunity missed. But through to the last 16 of the Champions League, and we're looking ahead to Leeds now.
We are indeed. Theo, Gorsty mentions Harvey Elliott there, and the youth is increasingly playing a bigger role for Liverpool, with Fabio Carvalho and Curtis Jones still racking up the minutes, and even Bajcetic is getting on as well. But a player who the manager was asked about in his press conference today was Elliott. He referenced the consistency that he's been showing. Did you expect Elliott to have this big of a role within the side at the beginning of this campaign?
Yeah, I think I did, to be fair, just because of how well he started last year. It was only, 6-7 games, something minuscule like that, before he had the horrible ankle injury against Leeds. But he was one of the first names on the team sheet. He started so well after such a good pre-season. And then he had the little spell when he came back where he was still in form. He played at the San Siro, he scored in the FA Cup. That's obviously just going to be adrenaline. You're going to have a little drop-off there, pick up a knock or something. And it was just a case of getting through that season, and then Elliott can have another pre-season to go again. For someone so young, he's got so much experience already. Liverpool competing in domestic competition or European competition. He's had a season in the Championship where he was scoring goals for fun for Blackburn. You forget he's still, just a teenager. It's one where he's probably still to find his set role in this Liverpool team, but that's the same for all the younger players. And maybe he started more games than we would have expected at the start of the season because of injuries elsewhere. But he was always going to be that one you'd pick to say, well, you'll probably step in to this side. I think I've said it on podcasts before, that while you start the season focusing with your experienced players like Thiago, Henderson, if you're having as good a season as you can from Jurgen Klopp's point of view, you want Harvey Elliott to be first choice come the end of the season so you can take those next steps long term. You want these younger players to be first choice and to not have a drop off in quality, to be able to rely on them. To not just be impact subs or throwing him in because you've got no option, because you want them to be your go-to players. And he's fast established himself as one of these. His goal was so well taken. He links up well with his teammates. It's a really good run from Salah pass. I like the fact that BT commentators just assumed it had gone wide until they see him wheeling off, celebrating. It was like the Raheem Sterling World Cup goal from 2014 in reverse. You know how much it means to Harvey Elliott as well as a boyhood Liverpool fan. He's not a Scouser, but he's still one of us sort of thing. There is that vibe with him, and you can see how much every single goal means to him. Even against Rangers, when his fingers are crossed and he's got Salah jumping on his back, waiting to see if VAR gives him that goal. He's a player you want to see doing well. You want to see him in this Liverpool team. He's getting the opportunities now, and he's ahead of the other younger lads in the pecking order, and it's just a case of piecing it all together. Jurgen Klopp, it's the right fit, isn't it? We've seen so many good things from him so far. 2023 could be a big year for him. World Cup's probably going to be beyond him, would imagine, unless there's a few injuries in England camp in the next few weeks. But then he'll have the under-21s Euros potentially next summer, and then he's going to be a huge player for club and country long term, as long as he can stay fit from injury from what we've seen so far.
Yeah. Tom, how important is the role that you see him having going forward for Liverpool? I mean, he just looks so comfortable in possession. He always wants the ball. He's always willing to get himself on it and drive Liverpool forward. And he just provides the spark that we've really needed this year just to start a lot of attacks.
Yeah, I think the problem we've seen, a few times when Thiago's not been playing, for example, you don't really have that player that's able to necessarily, find those gaps in the defence or, bring the ball forward. If it's, Henderson obviously has got a good passing range, can pick out a player. We saw that against Ajax, but, Elliott or Thiago, they're more able to carry it forward and, just have a little bit of quality on the ball to create an opportunity for a player. The thing I quite like about him, he takes quite a lot of risks when he's playing Elliott. he doesn't sort of play it safe every time he's got it. Not afraid to do something that other players wouldn't. So maybe that's why he's got to where he has, because he's just got something about him that Klopp must like. He has played well for the most part whenever he's been picked for Liverpool, and the big thing for him will just be, like you said, having that consistency over large periods in the season. So this year, he has played well the games he has played for Liverpool, but I guess it would just be a case of trying to get more goals and assists to his game. He's starting to add the goals now. I was reading a stat the other day about assists from Liverpool players in midfield, and there's been a lack of them sort of in the last year. I think it was only Henderson, Thiago, Fabinho. I think they'd only had like one or two assists at most each from midfield. So maybe you do need to see a bit more action from the midfield players, chipping in a little bit more. Because the last few years there's been such an emphasis on the front three sort of doing all of the work in that sense from attacking point of view. So if you can chip in with goals from midfield, that's going to be a really big help for Liverpool. Even if it was just 5 or 6 goals a season, that could make a big difference.
There has been a big emphasis on the midfield, hasn't there, Gorsty? And I think there's been a lot of talk recently about Fabinho, in that he hasn't been hitting his usual heights, which admittedly he hasn't. But I just want to know what you make of that criticism. I mean, my view on it is that he's clearly not being his usual standard, but it doesn't help when he's not always got the support around him that you would want.
Yeah, I mean, he's like so many others, I guess, this season where they haven't hit their best level, and it's difficult to explain why with Fabinho. But you look at, people can kind of suggest that Trent hasn't been anywhere near his best, and you say, okay, well, he hasn't quite had the protection from the midfield, and he's in the team to create, and when he doesn't get that, and he's he's told to go forward, that can leave gaps at the back, or you can possibly argue that Van Dijk hasn't been at his best. And again, a criticism would be that he hasn't had or a kind of mitigating factor would be that he hasn't had the midfield's protection as much as he has done in previous seasons. But with Fabinho, there aren't too many kind of glaring defences for him, other than just saying that perhaps he hasn't been able to play with the kind of regular midfield that he'd be used to. There've been so many injuries in that particular area of the pitch that it seems to be one that chops and changes so much. And I actually asked Fabinho this question before the United game. We had a chance to sit down with him before that game, and I said, it was only early on at the time. I think Liverpool had only played Fulham and Palace, so United was going to be their third game. But I said, is it difficult kind of getting up to your top speed when 1 week you might be playing with Harvey Elliott and Jordan Henderson, and the next week you might be playing with James Milner and Thiago, or Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita? It seems to be quite tough at the moment to get a little bit of stability in your area of the pitch. And he didn't use it as an excuse. He just said, we're all kind of quality players, so whoever plays, we expect to put in a performance, and we can't use that as an excuse. So I suppose that was fair of him to say that, because he could quite easily have said, oh yeah, well it is, when you're not quite sure who's going to be fit week to week or whatever. But he's certainly somebody who hasn't been anywhere near his best levels this season. The reasons for why are not as obvious as perhaps other players. So I guess it's just about just playing his way back into form slowly but surely. Because there's no question when he is at his top of his game, he's one of the best defensive screens around, isn't he? So hopefully he can kind of just play himself back into that form.
Yeah, and it's unfair to kind of put any kind of weight on one particular player. I think the whole team hasn't really been performing this season, and to individually point anyone else isn't really fair. But with a player that has been getting a bit of credit is Darwin Nunez. Finally, I think Klopp mentioned him in his press conference again today, Theo, and he said that he's excited about the potential of the forward, who has received a lot of criticism this season, but he's just quietly going about his business, isn't he? I think I haven't exactly got the numbers to hand, but he's probably around the goal a game now, isn't he? And with him being only 22, he's only going to get better.
I I think he's averaging like a goal a start or something like that. I think it's 13 appearances, 6 goals, and an assist. So, like, when you think of he hasn't started every game, like Klopp's basically listed the reasons today, hasn't he? When you had the disruption from the suspension, he doesn't speak English. It's a whole new set of training, induct into the culture, not a very long summer break. Like, he's given all these reasons why he's not hit the ground running. But then you look at the numbers, and actually, he kind of has. He's still returning the goals and he's making things happen. There are 2 issues really with Nunez. One is the misses. He's got a really well taken goal against Ajax, but let's be honest, we're all thinking about the open goal he missed. That is the main takeaway from Darwin Nunez from that game. And the second one is
I think that's harsh. He's, anyone can miss.
Yeah, anyone can miss it.
He responded well and scored a really good header.
He responded well, but if you think what is the main thing, that is the lasting image, isn't it? Like Firmino's reaction and everything, he should have scored more. But he's got the perfect mentality to it. The fact that he does respond well and he gets the goal. And we've seen that in so many games this season where he's missed a couple of chances and he still walks away with a goal. It's incredible how many he does miss, yet he still scored as many as he does. And it's a really respectable goal scoring return for a striker who is doing all this adaptation to a new league, new team. And it's a team in transition with all these injuries. And he is only going to get better. And like the second thing that's the issue for him is he's doing it all in Erling Haaland's shadow. Like Haaland is breaking these records that we've never seen before in England. Like we thought Salah's form last autumn was out of this world. We thought Salah's form in 17-18 when he got 44 goals was out of this world. It was like the closest English football or the Premier League era has seen to a Messi or a Ronaldo. And now Haaland's just taken that to a whole new level entirely. If Haaland wasn't doing that, Nunez wouldn't be getting as much criticism because you think, well, why isn't he doing that? There's so many reasons why he has taken this little bit more time to adapt, yet he's still delivering what you need him to do. He's still getting goals. He's still causing havoc. I'm sure he's one of these players that within a few months, defenders will be asked, who's the toughest player you've come up against? And they'll go, Darwin Nunez. They'll say how much they hate playing against him because he's this mixture of pace and physicality. You just can't take your eyes off him. Yeah, his touch might be a bit wild at times, or he might miss a chance you'll think should score, but then he'll go and score something out of nothing, or he'll just bully you and like racing for a header or something. Like Klopp said, there is a reason to be excited about him because the potential is so clear. Like if we're picking flaws in him at the moment in terms of touches or misses, and he's still scoring these goals, there's almost a similarity to when Luis Suarez first came through at Liverpool, where he was a scorer of great goals, but he didn't score too many goals. And it's the same level he did 2 years down the line. Given that time to learn the language, settle with his teammates, and everything clicks, he'd be mid-20s? He'll be hitting his peak a couple of seasons down the line, and there's no reason why he can't be returning 30, 40 goals a season if he can keep himself fit, if he can keep on improving. Klopp certainly thinks that's the sort of player he's got in his hands, and that's what we've heard today with all the excitement he's come out with. But it's just about turning that potential into this little bit more. But we've said it on podcasts before, despite what the opposing fans and critics might say, Liverpool fans, there's a reason why they love him. You look at him and he makes stuff happen. That's why we're getting excited. That's why he's getting these goals despite everything. And that's why the potential is there for more to happen.
I actually think, sorry, Tom, just before you come in on that, I actually think that the narrative needs to change a little bit now with Darwin Nunez, because a lot of it is still kind of rooted in those very, very early days in July when I can't even remember who they were playing. Was it United? And he come on and for whatever reason he ended up becoming a bit of a social media parody because he played 15 minutes and it wasn't particularly great. And that's kind of stuck with him for some reason. His return, as you mentioned earlier, Theo, was 6 goals in 13 games across all competitions.
I've just got the numbers up now. He's played 636 minutes and scored 6 goals, got 1 assist.
Yeah, I did the Blood Red column on him last week, and that was obviously before the Ajax game, and his goals to minutes then was under 150 minutes, and it was better than Harry Kane's, and it was better than Gabriel Jesus. So, all things considered, a guy, I think Klopp mentioned it today, Nunez came in on the Friday. His first day at the club was on a Friday afternoon. He came in to sort of kind of work visas out, all that kind of, red tape. And then he flew to Thailand. So he's adjusting to a new club, new surroundings, new teammates. he's in Thailand. He's coming off a long haul flight. He's having to adjust to training. Doesn't really speak the language, and then he comes back, scores against City, scores against Fulham, and then gets sent off. And the sending off has been crucial to it, really, because that's put him back 3 games. So that he was kicking his heels on the bench at a time when Liverpool are really struggling for form and momentum. But generally, looking at him taking his performances in a bit of a vacuum, he's doing really well. He scored 4 in his last 4 starts. It's just kind of circumstances around him that he's not in control of, i.e. Erling Haaland absolutely running away with things. And we had a chance to speak to Robertson after the game, and he said, someone asked him about the Haaland comparisons, and he said, look, they're only compared to each other because they're both strikers and they both moved in the same window. You can't really compare Erling Haaland with anyone. He's going to be, in the post-Messi Ronaldo world of football, he's going to be the first kind of global superstar, isn't he? Probably him and Mbappe are going to be the ones to kind of take that mantle. Liverpool don't need Darwin Nunez to do that. They just need him to be a very good striker for them. And I think he's, given the circumstances surrounding it, I think he's made a very, very good start. And as I said earlier on the pod, I think it's just going to be great watching him and just seeing what he does, in a Liverpool shirt, because there's never a dull moment with him.
It's one where you look at the games being called off as well when the Queen passed away. Even that's against him, because he's not played as much as you'd think, but it's not because he's been dropped or anything. He's missed 1 game because of injury, and then he's missed the 3 games through suspension. But Liverpool went a month without playing in the Premier League, and he just hasn't been able to get that rhythm. And now we're seeing a little bit of rhythm, and it feels a bit late in the season already because we're at the end of October, and he's had a good month, and we know we're off breaking for the World Cup in a couple of weeks. But that's just unprecedented times in the Premier League. In a normal season, we wouldn't have had that gap without Premier League games. He'd have played a lot more football, even with the suspension. And then he'd have got the rhythm, and he'd be scoring even more, and he'd be second, third in the scoring charts. Because as Gorst, he said, he's outscoring minutes-wise Kane. I think he's now got more goals overall than Jesus. And this is still coming into a Liverpool attack that for 5-6 years has been untouchable, and it's been so secure. And now all of a sudden it isn't, because they had this certain way of playing with Mane, Firmino and Salah, and now you've taken Mane out of it. You've had Luis Diaz adapt into that role, and while that was pretty much an instant impact from him, it's still this changeover period of Firmino's not first choice for you anymore. It's a new striker in there. Like Diogo Jota, it was still easier for him to come into that front 3 because it was settled. Now it's like finding a new way to play. Are they going to have this big target man up front who can still run around, cover so much ground and be so quick and still hit him the right ways, when maybe the wingers aren't going to be providing as much goals if you're going more central? Because Diaz, certainly, while he's a good goal scorer, he's got a few goals this season, he's not seemingly going to return as many as Mane did because the focus is going central. And then you've still got, this front 3 has been chopped and changed so many times this season already because of injuries, and they've had all these formations. These are just more excuses were coming up for him, but then they don't feel like excuses. They're just valid reasons. And he's still got one of the most respectable goal scoring returns in the Premier League. Imagine if he'd just had a proper summer break, proper pre-season. Liverpool weren't coming back off being knackered from nearly winning a quadruple. They hadn't lost a star player. They didn't have players out of contract, aging, didn't have all the injuries. If he'd just had everything going to plan and he could have the smoothest of starts, he'd have been one of these players we're singing everything about, like City are with Haaland. And instead, he's had pretty much everything that could go wrong for Liverpool and he's still getting a goal every other game. And if you break it down to minutes, their average is so much better than that, as we've already discussed. Like we keep saying, watch this space because it is only going to get better.
Yeah, and obviously there's been numerous things that have interrupted his rhythm. And if he starts putting together a good run now, the World Cup's in a couple of weeks, so there's like something else, another spanner in the works. Something else which could have provided a bit of a challenge for Liverpool in terms of rhythm, Tom, is Jurgen Klopp not being on the touchline. I don't want to spend too much on this because there's not really much to say really, but he's escaped the touchline ban. He's been given a fine and he seems quite apologetic about what went on with the linesman a fortnight ago. Is that a fair outcome in the end for you?
I mean, to be honest, I was expecting, wouldn't have been surprised if we got a ban, just because, I think earlier this season, you had the Tuchel and Conte incident. I thought the Premier League would just try and make a bit of a statement, to try and, they obviously don't want that sort of thing, that managers shouting at officials and linesmen. So I thought I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd given him like a 1-match ban, for example. But obviously it's good for Liverpool that he hasn't, because, it's a positive having him there for games going forward. But yeah, I am a bit surprised, to be honest, that he didn't get one. But yeah, Liverpool will be glad that's the outcome of it, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see him in his usual technical area. So moving on to Leeds now then. Gorsty, do you think, where can you see the main threats coming from Leeds?
I mean, last season was one of the easiest games of Liverpool's entire season, wasn't it? He played 63 games, and that 6-0 win in February really was one of the ones where they kind of were in first gear all throughout. But then the season before, when Leeds had just been promoted, they gave Liverpool, a real close run thing, and I think Liverpool won 4-3, needed a late penalty. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what end of the scale Leeds' performance is tomorrow. Not particularly flying high at the moment, are they, under Jesse Marsch? But I think they've got plenty of pace with the likes of Sinstera and Jack Harrison on the flanks, and I think if they could possibly exploit the space in behind Liverpool, but I imagine, well, we know that loads of teams try that, don't they, and it doesn't always work. And I think Liverpool's home form has become a little bit of a crutch for them this season, because they've been really poor on the road. They've lost all three. Well, the 3 games they've lost have all been on the road, haven't they? And just haven't really hit the stride there at all. But I think at Anfield, particularly with it being a night game, I think it'll be one that they will be confident of getting back to winning ways in the Premier League. I think Liverpool have just got to target a really strong finish now until the November break. Across all, obviously they're through to the last 16 of the Champions League, so that game against Napoli will be a little bit of a strange one, I'd imagine. I don't think Liverpool are going to be going hell for leather to try and outdo the 4-1 defeat and finish top of that group. But against Derby, if they can get through to the next round of the Carabao Cup, they're obviously defending that one, aren't they? And then the Premier League games tomorrow against Leeds, Southampton, and of course the difficult one, which is the trip to Tottenham. But I really do think they need to kind of target victories in all of these, and then see where the lay of the land is in the middle of November, and see what could still be possible on the other side of it. And they've got to start by taking care of business tomorrow at home to Leeds. So we'll see.
Yeah, Theo. Jesse Marsch was quite vocal about Leeds' performance recently and not picking up results when he feels that they performed quite well. And Jurgen Klopp reiterated it in his press conference today. He said that their performance haven't been reflected in the results that they've been getting. But Liverpool need to bounce back from that disappointment last week. Is a 7:45 kickoff the time to do that against a Leeds side that aren't putting the points on the board?
You'd like to think that means we're going to get a better atmosphere at Anfield. Like, it's almost going to feel like a European game, I suppose, having it under the lights. And it's one where playing Leeds, you'd be more concerned if it was Ellen Road, because it would be a similar sort of formula to that Forest defeat, where the fans are going to be up for it. The team's going to be up for it in front of the fans. And it's one where Liverpool either turn up, get the first goal and put 4 or 5 past them, or it's a real struggle and they end up losing. These are how Liverpool feel at the moment. They can go one of 2 ways. We saw that against Ajax, where if they conceded that first goal when it hit the post or anything, that could have been a horrible show for them. Instead, they dug in deep and managed to get what has been a rare away win this season. But as Gorsty said, Liverpool's home record's been decent enough this season. There's no reason why they can't be confident. And Leeds struggling. When Liverpool played games with Leeds recently, there's always been goals. Even if you remember Jesse Marsch when he was at Salzburg, when he came to Anfield, there were goals. So maybe we should expect another 6 or 7 shared between the 2 teams tomorrow night. We'll take that as long as it's not too nervy, wouldn't we? Maybe not a 7-0. I'm not saying anything as mad as that, but like a 4-2, something like that. Liverpool get a couple of goals early on and see it out. But yeah, the fans need to be up for it. There needs to be a response to that Nottingham Forest game. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, it can't be you think you've turned the corner only to trip up again. Liverpool have got to finish strongly before the World Cup break. and it starts tomorrow. It is a weird kickoff time. It's not really one you want to play on a Saturday, and Jurgen Klopp's alluded to that in his press conference. But just be glad it's at home, because then at least it's not too far to get back afterwards. Like, you feel for the Leeds fans if it doesn't go their way at Anfield, they get a heavy beating and they've got to make that long journey home when I'm sure public transport's not going to be the kindest for them. But Liverpool just need to put the Forest defeat behind them, build another run. Like we say after every defeat, get a couple of wins in a row, and then we start to feel that Liverpool's season's really started now. We've had a few false dawns. They need to be in the past now. This needs to be a proper start for the next month or so. 2-3 weeks. 2 World Cup breaks in like 2 weeks now, isn't it? It's ridiculous. This season, you lose track. But then, in 2023, the sooner that gets here, the better. Then Liverpool season can really start.
Yeah, Tom, the Nottingham Forest result was a particularly tough one to take, just because of how we managed to string together a couple of wins, and we seemed to build ourselves a bit of a platform to go on. But heading into this one now, how do you think the mentality will be amongst the squad?
I think they'll probably be quite confident getting a win, really. As the guys have just said, it's always feels a bit different when it's at Anfield. There's more of an expectation to win, really. Leeds haven't been great, as we've said. Forest is always a bit of a tricky one as well, because it's one of those grounds, it's not the easiest place to play at. They've got good support there, like Leeds do as well at Ellen Road. So I think when those sort of teams come to Anfield, they're not resigned to losing, but there's almost that fear factor Liverpool still have of playing at Anfield, and I think you see that with a lot of teams when they come to Anfield. I do think Leeds, to be honest, are one of those teams that aren't like that. They do tend to play quite expansive football. They're quite brave in how they play, particularly when they had Bielsa. That was very much their identity, I guess. Jesse Marsch is a bit like that as well in terms of the way he likes the team to play. But I think Liverpool, on the back of the Ajax game, surely have got to go into this, on the front foot, expecting to get a result. Anything other than a win really would be, a big disappointment. So, yeah, this is a real good opportunity, I think, for Liverpool to start, getting a bit of consistency back again, because, that's been lacking really since August.
Well, on that note, then, we will move into our teams. Alisson Becker's going to start. Gorsty, what's your backline?
I think Ibrahim Konate's had another couple of days training, so that could mean that he could come into the reckoning. But I don't know really. I think Liverpool kept 3 clean sheets in the last 4, and I just think you need that kind of stability, that continuity and consistency to carry it on. The timing of the games have been quite nice in terms of it being a Saturday night game. It's not a Saturday lunchtime game, which managers always hate after a Champions League week. So, yeah, I think might just be unchanged.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, I think so. Like, the Napoli game next midweek's a weird one where top spot's probably not realistic. So that's the one where you think Klopp can make a few changes, and that seems a better one to put Konate in for. Gomez and Van Dijk at centre-back. Trent Robertson at full-back. And then you make your changes against Napoli, you make your changes against Derby. There's enough in this fixture on to break it up a little bit between the rest of the guys and get a few more back from injury. So hopefully that's a strong enough one to get the job done, keep another clean sheet.
Yeah, I agree myself. Tom, 4 yeses? You just muted there, mate.
Oh, sorry. As Theo was saying, I think Napoli's probably the right game for bringing Konate back in, with there not really being too much riding on that one. So, yeah, I think it probably makes sense to try and, keep it as it has been. So I think I'll go with Paul and Theo. And you?
Yeah, go with the lads that are still in some form. So onto the midfield then. Is Harvey Elliott keeping his place? I know Fabinho went off, didn't he, against Ajax as well. So how do you think he'll change it around for Leeds United?
It's a difficult one to guess now, isn't it? Because he went with the diamond to kind of keep Salah and Nunez in central areas, and Firmino dropped into almost a number 10 position. And don't think anyone's seen that coming, to be honest. Thiago will return. I think Klopp said that today in his press conference. Just a case of who we wanted to rest between Henderson and Fabinho. I'd be minded to give Fabinho a breather, and keep Elliott. So that'd kind of be the midfield three. If it is a midfield three, it's a bit of a strange one at the moment, isn't it? For years we backed on Liverpool being 4-3-3, and at the moment there could be anything really.
Yeah, it's tough to put your finger on how exactly we're going to set up after that. What do you think, Theo? What's your three?
Yeah, no idea what the formation is. It's going to be a tricky one. I think Klopp even hinted himself that he might change it again, didn't he? So it could be 4-3-3, it could be 4-4-2, it could be 4-2-3-1, it could be Diamond again. It's tricky. Henderson took this knock to his knee, and Klopp suggested that he thinks he'll be back. But at the same time, there's no real need to risk him or rush him back because it's a rare situation where Liverpool got so many injuries, but most of the midfielders still seem to be available to them. So I'd maybe have Fabinho keep his place. Maybe it's just going to be the same three. I don't have a clue how they're going to line up or what formation or anything, but Fabinho, Henderson, and not Henderson, sorry. It's not going to be the same three. I've completely forgot that. Thiago comes in for Henderson, and then Elliott on the other side. Curtis Jones is a contender. Oxlade-Chamberlain's not going to start, is he? Then I've got the curveball of, do you put Milner in against his former club? It's very hard one to work out. And if we actually knew what formation Liverpool were playing, it'd be an easier one to pick. At least they've got plenty of midfielders to choose from. That's all I'm going to say now. I'll sort of go for Thiago, Elliott and Fabinho, but then you wouldn't have any issues with any of the others that are available at the moment.
No. Tom, how's it going to look in the middle of the park, mate?
Yeah, I think Thiago, Fabinho and Elliott as well. Henderson probably, would have started had he not had that knock. So other than that, I don't think there's really many other options. I know Jones or Milner, I don't think either of them will start this one. So I think I'll go for those three as well. Yeah,
what about the front line then, Gorsty? I thought seeing Nunez in the lineup the other day, I thought he was actually going to be on the left. But he was quite central from the start of the game. So how do you think that's going to be now with looking at your midfield and going forward?
Yeah, well, Klopp said that, didn't he? When he did the lineups at the start of the game, they had Nunez on the left, Firmino in the middle, and Salah on the right. But Klopp said he wanted Nunez to be in more central areas, which I think is the right call because, he's quick, but I don't really see Nunez being a left winger. He's very much a number 9 for me. So I think it might just be the same again. I think he doesn't have too many options, to be fair, in terms of rotating his front line. Diaz and Jota are both out. Carvalho, still will take time before we see the absolute best of him because he's a young lad moving to a completely new team with massive expectations. So I think we will just be as we were with Firmino in a little bit of a withdrawn role and Nunez and Salah down the middle.
Yep.
I suppose the only alternatives to that would be if you had Jones on the left or if you had Carvalho on the left. And that's one where it depends on the formation entirely. I think you've got to have your senior players who know the roles better and the formation better. So I'd keep it unchanged because while the Liverpool didn't start too well against Ajax, it did seem to click reasonably well as they grew into the game. And it had Salah and Nunez in the dangerous positions, the ones where they're going to cause mischief, the ones where they're going to get goals. And when things are a bit up and down for Liverpool, you need to rely on your goal scorers to get you the goals to be in those positions. And Leeds haven't had the best of starts this season. Maybe that's where Liverpool can cause the most damage. So at least having the 2 goal scorers there in the middle of the park-ish, drifting out wide if they want to, with Firmino as the number 10, that should work well again if everything clicks. But yeah, it's just so hard to call at the moment because Liverpool are changing formation game on game, never mind starting 11.
Tom, what about yourself, mate?
Yeah, I think the attack, it kind of picks itself at the moment just because of the lack of options, really. So I think it's just going to be the same 3 again that we've seen against Ajax.
Okay, then, score predictions. Gorsty, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I seen Leeds against Arsenal a couple of weeks ago, and they were unlucky, really. Bit of VAR nonsense at the end kind of denied them, didn't it? And they missed a penalty in that one. But I think at Anfield, Liverpool will be a lot stronger, and I think it might just be. I'll go with 2-0.
2-0 for you.
3-1.
3-1, leading by 2 again. Tom?
I have to take a leaf out of Theo's book here and go 4-1 to Leeds. Predict the big away win. It's going to bring us luck, apparently. But no, I think 3-0, I think I'll go for Liverpool.
Yeah, I think I'll join you on 3-0. Right, all wins for Liverpool then. We'll all have our fingers crossed over here, and we will see you next time on the Blood Red Podcast. I want to thank all the lads for jumping on and everybody for listening.